Tipp today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning and welcome to Tipp Today on this fine Monday morning with Donald Doyle in here again for Fran Curry. Coming up on this morning's show, we'll be talking to Ireland South MEP Cynthia Mhurchú, who is calling on the Taoiseach to improve his communication after the fuel protest. She used the word defective to describe it. She'll be joining us now in just a few minutes. We'll have David Young from the Irish Beef and Lamb Association live here in studio in Nina to discuss the issues facing farmers all across the country. Cllr Seamie Morris will be sharing a letter he wrote to the Taoiseach. Thomas Conway will be here as usual with the global news. Our relationship expert Susan O'Donoghue will also be in here with us, and our sports editor Paul Carroll will be looking back on the weekend's sporting action and of course Semple Stadium yesterday. All this and much more on the way, but first this morning, Sarcoma Cancer Ireland and Pieta have given us 2 tickets to give away each day this week for their fundraising concert, which is featuring Michael English and taking place on the bank holiday Monday, the 4th of May in the Church of St. Mary of the Rosary here in Nina. Both charities rely heavily on public support, and this event is aiming to raise funds and awareness while offering a memorable night out with music and crack. To be in with a chance to win, you can text or WhatsApp Michael English followed by your name and details to 083 311 3311. Now we'll have a quick look at the front pages of the newspapers. We'll go first to the Examiner, which of course has a picture on the front of some Cork supporters in red and white wearing hats enjoying the sunshine in Thurles yesterday. We'll have more obviously on that match later. The main headline is home energy prices could see a hike of 9%. That's coming from the likes of the energy regulator and the Minister for Energy, Darragh O'Brien, warning that increases in electricity and gas are likely to come and hit us from May onwards. There's a headline about driving test cancellations surging by 36% last year. The RSA, the Road Safety Authority, going to come under fire for that one. Fisru, the Garda Ombudsman, is investigating claims of domestic and sexual abuse in another headline. And the Taoiseach, in a slightly linked matter, says is calling on TDs not to give references to people in sex trials. That headline is also mirrored as the main headline in the Irish Independent today, where a mystery TD was wrong to support a sex offender in court, according to Micheál Martin. Fionn Sheehan, the Thurles man who was on with us last week, is also on a banner headline here talking about Mary Lou's courting of official Ireland ending with the fuel protest. So a bit of analysis of the Sinn Féin leader there. The Indo, of course, does have a picture of Tipp and Cork players involved in a tussle in Semple Stadium as well. Like I say, we'll come back to that a little later. And there is another headline about an energy company taking thousands out of customer accounts in a bill blunder, with more of that inside the paper. Staying with Micheál Martin in the Irish Daily Mail, the main headline there is Martin vows to lead Fianna Fáil into the next election. We'll touch on that maybe in a couple of moments with Cynthia Mhurchú. The Taoiseach says he's adamant that he will continue despite unease over his failure to steady the nation. And in the Times today we have the main headline is back to energy and fuel, and it says that Ireland is to ask the EU for a tax cut on aviation fuels coming from the US. This is to do with the pressure on airlines with the reported shortage of jet fuel down the track. There's also a headline on 248 US military flights over Ireland that went unreported, and a unusual one as well. Trinity medical students are to be assessed on ability to love. This is about, I guess, about doctors' empathy and bedside manner, I suppose you could say. Those are the main headlines that we can see in the papers today if you're looking for more to read, but we'll try and touch on as many of those issues as we can over the next couple of hours. Now, first guest this morning is our Ireland South MEP, Cynthia Mhurchú. Cynthia, good morning to you. How's things on this Monday morning?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
No problem at all, Cynthia, and good morning to you too. Tell me, look, Micheál Martin is on most of the front pages today. Obviously, his leadership and his communication have been under scrutiny, let's just say, over the past 2 weeks. You, in particular, calling his communication style defective. Do you want to tell us more about why you made that comment or how you came to that assessment?
Yes, certainly. And I'll be very brief because I think it's time for us to move on now. If there's going to be a leadership heave, let's have one and let's get on with it. Otherwise, there's far too many serious problems facing people who are sitting in tractors, in shops, teachers, banks, you name it. Everybody who's working in this country is facing problems. It's called the cost of living crisis. It's also called the fuel crisis and the heating crisis. So the reason why I called it defective was that in the height of the protests, at a very, very difficult time, not only for the people who were peacefully protesting, I'm not referring to the people who are blockading ports and strategic infrastructure. I'm talking about the people who are democratically entitled to protest peacefully. And they were trying to do that, and they were trying to engage with An Garda Síochána, with public reps. And in the middle of all of that, I'm talking about at some stage in the middle of the week of the protests, unfortunately, the language used by the Taoiseach, which were words to the effect of national sabotage in the context of those blockading ports, and also words to the effect the government's hands are tied with regards to the assistance that they could give, the financial assistance in this crisis to those most dependent on diesel, i.e. those driving heavy trucks and articulated trucks and so forth, and contractors and bringing food for supermarket shelves, etc. That type of language is incorrect at that particular time. Yes, of course, we want a Taoiseach who was very decisive in his language, and whilst Micheál Martin was decisive, and he's always a good, strong, decisive leader, and certainly displays a backbone, we also need empathetic language, and that's what was missing at the time of this crisis. So that's why I said his communication, his words, his actual words were defective, and then his communication performance with his backbenchers was also defective, because they, unfortunately, the likes of Ryan O'Mara, our dear colleague there in Tipp, also James O'Connor in East Cork, and Albert Dolan, I highlight them because they are the three young TDs that signed a joint letter between the three of them to Micheál Martin and essentially called him out. But I think they and all the others who were on the sidelines with the peaceful protesters who were fighting for their lives, they were getting no communications from the government. Call it the government, call it the cabinet, call it the ministers, call it the communications experts that are around those people I've referenced, and of course around An Taoiseach. They just weren't getting any communication with regards to potential solutions. And also, as I understand it, from speaking with my colleagues, although messages and communications were being sent by TDs around the country up the line to the government, it only seemed to be going in one way, and those TDs weren't sure where it landed, how it landed, and they got no feedback.
Yeah, well, I was out covering the protests during the week, Cynthia, and I was there when Micheál Martin made his national sabotage comments, well, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, but the reaction on the ground from the protesters absolutely inflamed them. And I know from, for example, on the Gardaí's part, their view was that they didn't do them any favours in trying to communicate with the protesters and keep things on a calm basis. I suppose, look, was there an issue that he was conflating the blockades with the protesters, or did he have a point that they were shutting down the government in a way that was not peaceful protest?
Yes, I think unfortunately there was conflation, there was muddling. I've heard the Minister of the Arts describing his communication in relation to launching a review of on Commission Imán with regards to how the media reported as he made hames of it. He described it as that on the News at One, I believe, last Friday. And I suppose in this instance, I would say Taoiseach and anybody around him advising that utterances such as that be uttered on, as you say, the national airwaves at that particular time when people were already knee-deep on the side of the road in muck and in grime and in, sandwiches and probably cold at night time and sleeping in the cab of a tractor. Like none of this, they didn't want to be doing it. They were put to the pin of their collar. And unfortunately, we all knew that in advance of the protest. So as I've said on a different radio station, on Holy Thursday, I sat in the Banner Plaza in County Clare, which had just been opened that day officially by Darragh O'Brien, the Minister for the Environment and so forth. And afterwards, a meeting had been arranged. This is obviously, 5 days in advance of the protest, with contractors. And we met with them. When I say we, there was Minister Timmy Dooley, there was Cynthia as an MEP, coming in with a European perspective and going back with this message to Europe on the following Monday, which I did because the Monday wasn't a bank holiday in Europe, so I was back there. And there was also Conn Crowe, Teachbadala from Clare, and there was also a number of councillors, Fine Gael included. So we were listening. We were actively listening and we knew the task we had to do. We met with the chair of the IFA in Clare, we met with the contractors whom he brought in and others, and we brought the message back. But unfortunately, the communications piece fell down. Call it the bank holiday weekend, call it panic, but we don't want people to panic or to overreact or underreact at these sorts of times, because quite frankly, this was unprecedented, and I believe there were definite warning signs that this was going to be unprecedented. So I believe there should be not only a plan A, but a plan B as well. And, the cabinet came back and they met fairly swiftly, but it needed to be quicker. It needed to be quicker, and the communications needed to be opened, as you say, on the side of the roads themselves at the peaceful protests. And we needed to see the Taoiseach out there. A bit like, the Taoiseach has been great when towns are flooded and they encounter untold damage to their properties, and the Taoiseach immediately, or perhaps Minister Boxer Moore, goes with them down to the flooded areas and so forth. But we needed to see leaders at the side of the road talking to these people.
I suppose most of the communications experts will tell us that listening is a huge part of communication. It's not just what you say, it's what you hear. And that seemed to be lacking. Is that the problem?
Yes, exactly. I mean, the so-called Good Friday meeting, where obviously there was a cat and mouse game going on between government and the road hauliers were playing a really important role there by saying, look, we're already meeting with government on, I think it was the Good Friday, and the government were saying, well, look, if the road hauliers wish to bring in somebody who wants to be represented, who doesn't feel they're already represented, well, then they can. To me, that was a real cat and mouse game. I wasn't pleased with that. It should have been far more definite. There should have been an open invitation made, not to open the floodgates and invite everybody and anybody who's protesting, because Taoiseach was correct. Who were they to negotiate with? They should have given them, I believe, a limited time. When I say them, the people who were protesting and said nobody represents us, but there should have been an invitation given for a limited period of time to nominate somebody, nominate somebody yourselves, and send them up to that Friday meeting. We only needed maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people from different parts of the country to make themselves heard and to know that they were listened to and they were in the room. That didn't happen. They were refused entry, some of them, that came up with a Fine Gael TD from Galway. And my colleague John Connolly had also been involved in that and getting some of those representatives from Galway trained up on that afternoon.
Some of the communication from that side, though, was lacking as well. Whereas on one part, I had protesters telling me that all they wanted was for their representatives to get into the meeting, and other protesters telling us that the demands that they set out and told us on that Tuesday after the Easter weekend that they wanted a cap on fuel prices and that they weren't going away without everything that they had demanded. So there was a large gap there that no government officials would be able to breach, though.
Yes. Unfortunately, hindsight is perfect vision, 2020 vision. But unfortunately, what happened was there was quite heightened language and actions obviously happening by the protesters, peaceful protesters, not talking about the people in blockades. That's a separate case altogether because I don't support that at all. And that was an attempted act of national sabotage. And those words on their own in the correct context, Donal, could be used to describe that. I would have used them, but I wouldn't have used them in the context in which they were used and at the time that they were used. Now, of course, as I said, that's perfect vision. But look, what's really important is that when people are desperate and when you see the anger and also the panic in their eyes and they're protesting at the side of the road and they're away from their homes and their loved ones and they're in this vacuum and they're with this group and obviously the atmosphere is being heightened and hyped up, well, it calls for a step change by those of us, public reps, me included, who's not in a cab, in a tractor on the side of the road. I'm in a comfortable office, or I'm in an office and I'm trying to strategically think about this and I'm trying to deal with it. So it calls for a step change. And as I say, language really matters at that time. We could have done things better. We didn't, but we did put together, in fairness to the government, and they were, it was a moving crisis, moving very swiftly, moving at a speed. And obviously there was, it was snowballing in terms of people not being able to access healthcare, hospitals, special needs for children. You are talking about very serious acts. Pregnant women not being able to get to a hospital perhaps to give birth, and somebody could have died. That was the issue. I mean, that was the bottom line, really. So I understand that there was extreme pressure on everybody, but I think government are called government for a reason, and they have to govern. And, government, we do look to them to make decisions under pressure, which Micheál Martin is very good at doing. He's not perfect, nobody is. But in this particular instance, I do think we saw it coming. And I've said that already. I mean, I'm repeating myself now, but I do think this was coming because the government had many, many meetings, not going back months now, Donal, because I deal with the Road Hauliers Association as well, because I'm on the Transport Committee in Europe. So I'm in touch with them all the time and about their need to get into government to talk about not just the price of diesel, which obviously flared up in the last 7 to 8 weeks of the war in Iran. But I mean, they're caught by an awful lot of extra charges. And this was the thing that tipped them over, and others, of course, contractors as well. But the Irish Road Hauliers have been facing an awful lot of increased charges, whether it's to do with Dublin Port, raising port charges, or whether it's toll prices are being raised and so forth. And then they lose fuel when they have to stop at tolls and they can't get an automatic roll through at tolls and so forth. And then they have to deal with everything else that the employers out there listening to me this morning know they have to deal with, which is auto-enrolment and higher minimum wage and the host of red tape, which I won't go on about, but I'm working in Europe hard to try and reduce. So what I'm saying is that those meetings that the government were having with the various representative bodies, properly representative bodies, I think were a calling card. And once the Iran war started and once the invasion was initiated and so forth, I think it was red alert time, and that was weeks before the protests.
Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah. And there definitely wasn't enough, I suppose, exposure of the fact that the government were actually in talks already,
Exactly.
where the protesters were saying we need talks, and the government was saying that we are already in talks, but what was getting the headlines was the national sabotage comments. But you say your problem is with Micheál Martin's communication style, not with his leadership. But is there not something to do with his style of leadership as well? It's very top down. We saw that from the presidential election, and it doesn't seem like lessons were learned there.
Yeah, look, I'm a newbie to Fianna Fáil, as you know. I got elected in 2024. I wasn't involved in party politics up to that point, but I'm a bit of an anorak, a political anorak, and have been all my life. And I did do a stint in journalism as well. And I've always been always very interested in Fianna Fáil politics. And Fianna Fáil was the only party that I subscribed to in my own personal life. Talking about the leadership, I'm going to address your point now, Donald. Okay, so I looked at the statement of the three young TDs, and you know something, I really understood what they were saying. They're young, they're enthusiastic. We need them. We need them so badly in Fianna Fáil. Fianna Fáil, like a lot of political parties, is ageing. Nothing wrong with being old like myself, but I want to see younger people getting involved. I particularly want to see young women. I particularly want Ógra Fianna Fáil strengthened. And I particularly want to see middle-aged women who have maybe reared their kids like I did, or older women. I want to see them getting involved in the party as well, because it's only when we've got those inclusive voices. And by inclusive, I don't mean something namby-pamby. I just mean people who have had a life elsewhere, like me in the courts. Maybe another woman would have had a lifetime in finance, in the financial arena, or maybe in some other area like healthcare. But I want to see the party being inclusive and regenerating. Now, the point I'm trying to make is I've been beating a drum about those aspects of the party since I got elected, and I'm not getting anywhere very fast. So is that indicative of either the style of leadership, or is it indicative of the fact that governing is hard, Donald? There's no point in saying that Micheál Martin has time to twiddle his thumbs or to take a couple of days off over the weekend, or even a couple of hours off or minutes off. He doesn't. Neither do any of the government ministers. I see firsthand how hard they work. But somewhere in all that busyness and importance of governing, you have to look at the piece which is called where is this party going and where is this country going? So these three young men, my friends, my colleagues, Ryan and James and Albert, they wrote a statement and they said the social contract was a breaking point, but they didn't just simply say that. They said it in the context. If you read the next sentence, what they said is that too many people our age do not feel included in the political discourse. Like, if you read their statement carefully, it's a very well written. I'm very impressed by their writing skills, and their choice of words, I have to say, was very good. But they said too many of our friends, they wonder why we're involved in the political party. They wonder how would they even think about being included in the political discourse.
And my reading of that, Cynthia, was kind of that they were kind of saying, are we wrong to have put our faith in politics like this?
Yeah, they also said something that I believe is unique to the Gen Zs, and I do consider them Gen Zs, even if some of them aren't, the three lads I'm mentioning. But I have Gen Zs at home, well, not at home, but 25 and 24 years of age. And the reason why I understood, I think, immediately when I read it, is that Gen Zs actually, they actually do want to be involved. And they do want a better future, but they want closer communication with those making decisions. So that's a type of communication skill that has to be looked at afresh by political parties, Fianna Fáil in particular, and that is being closer to the electorate. Now, of course, Micheál Martin on Taoiseach, he can't be running around every constituency as if he's running an election every day of the week, because he has to govern and he has to go to countries all around the world, and we've got the presidency of the European Union coming up and so forth, the Council of the European Union, I should say. And therefore, I think he needs to spread it out. You know, the Taoiseach has many, many able frontbenchers and ministers and all of the talent that we have in Fianna Fáil, and we have a lot of it. Sorry now, I'll blow our own trumpet. And he's brought in somebody like me, and I'm not suggesting I'm the best and the biggest, but I am bringing something a little bit new and fresh and different to the party. That's great. So too is lots of TDs who are now coming to the party and involved. We've got different backgrounds now, which is great. But we need to constantly renew that and regenerate. So I think.
So are you saying, Cynthia, that he has gathered too much power and responsibility to himself?
sorry, I don't think that's a leadership style that he has designed in a very negative way. I think Taoiseach works too hard. I think he tries too hard. I think he needs to let go a little bit and trust that talent all around him. And by that I mean make sure when he can't get out and he's trying to negotiate a fuel package with the reps that are present in the room, that he makes darn sure that there's a minister or two or three heading off around the country to the port of Galway, down to East Cork, and down to places where there were actually blockades. And of course, blockades, as I say, were an act of defiance against everybody in the country, which can't be tolerated. And they shouldn't have been tolerated.
Sorry to cut across you, Cynthia, but we are running out of time a little bit, and I want to ask a couple of more questions, if I may. Just is a line drawn under it now? He seems to have drawn a line at Arbour Hill at the commemoration yesterday, saying he wants to and will lead the party into the general election. Is that it? Is that it over?
Yeah, well, sorry, I hope there's a line drawn under the leadership role because, as I said, we've far too many serious problems. There's people very worried out there looking at their bank balance. How are they going to stretch it until Friday? How are they going to stretch it to meet the mortgage at the end of the month or whatever, if they're lucky enough to have a mortgage and being able to meet the mortgage payments? So draw a line under any sort of leadership question, right? And any of this navel gazing. It's ridiculous, quite frankly, with the seriousness of the situation. But I will be putting forward at the PP party, I will be putting forward ideas with regards to communication, and I would like those acted upon. Now, bear in mind, Donald, we did have a priority list arising out of the report in relation to the presidency issue debacle, and I have yet to see how those changes and those priority lists are going to be put into effect. So the clock is ticking in my head in the sense that we really can't say, please do that, but we have to see the change.
Okay. One last question then. You're over obviously in Brussels and Strasbourg. What's the view over there of the Irish government at the moment, particularly in light of our EU presidency coming up?
We're held in high esteem over in Europe. It's really important that Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who's fantastic on the international stage, that he leads out for us, for Ireland, not just Fianna Fáil. This is about every citizen in the country, making sure that we have friends in Europe, that we protect our friends in Europe, and that we win friends back. Because with the new order out there, which is all about defence and security, and rightly so, because Ukraine is battering away 4 years on, and Putin's never going to give up. So it's really important that Ireland is seen to play its really effective role as a united European with those on the eastern flank, with those, countries in the middle, and then with ourselves. So quite honestly, Ireland has been looked upon very enviously by European countries. We seem to be doing extremely well in the air out of Europe, and therefore we do need to make sure that countries who look at us enviously know that we're also pulling our weight. And that's what we need to do during the presidency.
Okay, your line is breaking up a little bit there, Cynthia, as well. But thanks very much for your time. We better wrap it up there. Okay, but I'm sure we'll talk to you again on the show. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tipp Today this Monday morning with Donal in for Fran. And it was a bit of an interesting, maybe controversial interview with former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar recently, speaking on the Path to Power podcast, in which he said that farmers bring costs on Ireland more than drive our economy now. And he was suggesting that people in urban areas are actually the ones who are paying all the bills and should be getting more attention. During an exchange with with Matt Cooper, the host. Mr. Varadkar argued that the relationship between agriculture and the wider national interest has shifted in recent decades. We're joined now by the Tipperary chair for the Irish Beef and Lamb Association, David Young. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Thank you for having me on. And also the IBLA members were glad to get our voice come across.
Absolutely. And look, you're going to tell me a little bit. Now, we heard, obviously, in the protests, there was a lot of farmers involved in the protests over recent weeks and a little disaffection, I suppose, with the farming organisations. We might talk a little bit about that. But you're here really to tell me what farmers across the country are facing at the moment, and just to kind of highlight the major issues. I suppose what is the number one?
Oh, look, the last 2 weeks here, this is going on longer, way longer than even what's happened in the last 2 weeks. This is just like a pressure cooker, and suddenly, the steam as it rose, and action has to be happened. Challenges is the government have really failed in their fuel package that they announced. It is a very, very weak package. The anger is felt all through the agriculture community. I know myself, I work in the agribusiness, besides being a sucker farmer. I'll be working in agri-retail, and you can feel it in the cold face of what's going on out there. Farmers are very angry. Plus, who's and fair dues to those protesters, the agriculture contracting people in...
There was very little movement on the green diesel, David, but we understand that's to do with technicalities, and Michael Lowry, I should say, not Micheál, was on with us last week, and he told us that there are discussions on with Europe and that they are trying to do more on the green diesel, which obviously would be a boon to your members and to farmers and contractors in general.
Correct, but at the same time, it's very, very poor and time-based. That's very, like in the next few weeks, there will be those people in contracting, they'll be working 20 hours a day. And I'm sad to say here this morning, because I heard it through a grapevine through one of the delegates in protest, another two protesters have taken their life this morning through suicide. And he just announced it. And that's called comfort to those people and families. It's just... The whole thing is about financial and financial packages as well. And even the pressure as well is going to become on the farmers themselves. And how I'll state that is, maybe that agriculture maybe had a chat with the farmers, because farmers are planning their silage season or their work and appreciate the work that those people offer. But those contractors said, sorry, Dave or John or whoever. One farmer says in question, I'm going to have to add on another 30 euro an acre to cut your silage per acre. And that farmer is saying, okay, fine, but who do I pass that cost on to? Do you know, we're price takers. And don't get me wrong, the agriculture contractor does not want to do that either. He provides a great service. We had a wet spring too, and they have equipment to move, say, farm air manure and slurry out in fields where an ordinary farmer can't. We have to rely on it. The farming community are very strong and resilient and unified. But I think it's very, very cold comfort if our government has said that they will we're going to review it at the green diesel package. It's what's going to happen. The summer will come and go. It's going to be a long winter ahead coming through. I find that we've very, very poor representation in the county now at the moment with our TDs. It's very. I listened there to Cynthia there before I came on here, and she was Morris talking through both sides of her mouth. No offence to her, but those three young TDs, she even said herself, it's their friends. When you go to represent yourself as a TD, you represent everyone. You represent from the very, very young to the very, very old. So, and I kind of feel that those three TDs, and unfortunately they were targeted as the three young pups, which is, you can't do business either being called like that, but that's just the anger is felt amongst the community. And also as well, she mentioned there about the delegates as well. One delegate was refused entry up into Ag House that day. He is actually an FCI regional in the Galway region. The same man, John Dolan.
Right.
And saying that they were undiplomatic. That same man is a diplomatic character. He's not, and
that he was part of an official
and Micheál Martin came out this morning, and he's using. He should be getting on with the serious issues at hand. He's actually using our tricolour now as a weapon himself. As a weapon itself, tarnishing those protesters that were using our beloved tricolour. When I saw the tricolour rose up above it and I seen it there during the week on lorries and maybe on a tractor, or even the few people there last Sunday in Neenah town, they weren't rogues. They had pride in their tricolour. And Micheál Martin now, he wants to be careful what he says. He's using a bit of propaganda and with the people in stating that as well.
Yeah, well,
protesters
he
good
was speaking at the Arbour Hill Easter 1916 commemoration, right? It's a national thing, and of course the tricolour, as we all know, was the green, the orange, and the white joining them. It was meant to be a symbol of unity in Ireland, and I think really he wasn't necessarily talking so much about the recent protests, but there have been uses recently where the tricolour has been put up on roundabouts and roadways around asylum centres.
Yes.
And it was to intimidate the asylum seekers and people. So there has been
that element of grant.
There is certainly
but
that.
I'm not.
And some of those anti-immigration protesters are hijacking it, and look, there's issues, and I don't think he was necessarily targeting the protests as such, but he does have some disquiet that there was some links there to anti-immigration.
But I'm not. You're
and
correct.
I know that some of the protesters themselves told me that they were invited to join by the likes of Christopher Duffy, who was an anti-immigration protester.
Yes, but that's fair enough. But I can see the hard-working people in Ireland, when they see the tricolour, they have pride in it. Just leave it out.
Absolutely. And we saw that, absolutely. And nothing like the soccer to join us behind the flag as well recently. So there was a lot of love for it. But I don't think we necessarily should get bogged down in those comments. Tell us, I suppose, look, the cost of doing business for farmers, and I grew up in a country, in the countryside, and I always loved the silage season because of the frenzy of activity and the flurry of lads, machinery would break down and the rush to get it going again.
You mentioned about the costs of we'll get back to that. As I say, we'll use the contractor as an example. It's just inflationary costs is just passed down to the price taker. Utah, we'll mention that. Beef, we'll say, as some farmers, they're finishing cattle at the moment, they have maybe lost €450 a head in the last 3 months on finishing animals. Fertilizer has gone up to 33, 35, maybe more in certain products. It's cold comfort.
And the threat of shortages as well in fertilizer, because whatever about this season, but it looks like unless things are sorted out, and even if they are, there's production issues. Are farmers worried about that?
They're worried about that, but would say as part of IBLA, it was actually very interesting there recently that our colleagues, we're actually when we go to Brussels, we're actually heard. And it was actually refreshing when a delegate as well that the EU are planning to implement maybe a form of contracts are going to be offered to a farmer bringing cattle to a factory. So and we're lobbying since 2019, and that will take the risk. The farmer always takes the risk. And it's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's the farming community is reducing in every way in that line. But with contracts, doesn't mean the farmer has to take up a contract. The offer will be there, but it's all, I must state, it'd be up to the member states, and that's our government to implement that through EU legislation when it is passed. So that's welcomed. So we mentioned areas there as well about the Mhurchú as well, maybe as well. That's another issue as well that hasn't it has to be kind of not finished yet. Like it's not
been referred on.
It's referred to kick touch, and there would be a fiasco as we see it has been kicked to touch as well down another month. The fact is there with the Mhurchú deal, it's very simple. Like the Mhurchú deal is good only for the beef deal with Brazilian beef. Like just take the beef. IBLA was thinking, just leave it out of the deal, overall deal. And that's what the areas we should be pushing to get that across the line. It brought in we have the Larry Murren there. He's the chair of the board. Okay, he has Dawn Foods, but the way business is going with competitive advantage, he's just looking as the Brazilian beef as a substitute and not paying for quality product that's made in this island. The ethics of it, very questionable. Like, when you take Brazilian beef, it was alarming that beef that was already in the country, and it takes 3 months before, when it's tested, for the results to come out. And when that beef was actually consumed by our people, before, and there was form of carcinogenics residuals was found in that beef, that's alarming. Like, that's ethics in itself. And with the traces system,
over the production over there,
and food labelling is, as I said, we're not finished with Borbia. And don't think that the government thinks that it's just. I put it in myself as making it equivalent of Jim Galvin with the presidential fiasco, you could call it. There was a report to be put out to me on Martin. We never really heard that report. It was supposed to come out in December and January. Never did. It was just put under the table. The way we do business in Ireland, that's not what we want to do. And if our top politicians have to stand up, they're the things that they have to stand up with. And Cynthia there mentioned about our 3 young Fianna Fáil TDs. They have to listen to everyone, and it isn't just their friends. It's young and old, and grow a bit of backbone. Yeah, hindsight is a great thing, do you know? So, other than that,
I suppose. Look, you've mentioned Borbia. We had the fuel protests. There was a wide-scale IFA campaign to get the nitrates directive. Are the government, I suppose, what I'm wondering is, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction.
There is dissatisfaction there. You mentioned maybe the IFA. They had a really good political rally to come out for the irrigation. But it's for, that's cohort of farmers maybe down in our area, basically.
That's a very small number of farmers.
It's a small number of farmers. Yeah, but actually, there's the other farmers up at the top of the end of the country from the west of Ireland. We're here in Tipperary, okay, we're more dairy orientated. There's a lot who are sheep farmers and beef farmers, and they're completely forgotten about. And it was actually, I thought when IFA, not against the leader, when it was refreshing to hear when he was a beef and a sheep farmer, and as himself, suddenly when he came in as the president, got a different voice. But I'm afraid there's no real change, no real drastic change. Failure to listen. You mentioned earlier on there about communication. 90% of communication is listening. Yeah. Communication is everything. And our government and also those farm members, we did not come across. IBLA should not be existed if proper regulation was done, and that we came about since 2019 as a result of poor maybe leadership from other farm organisations. But it also as well, it was actually disheartening too to hear. I was listening over the weekend about Leo Varadkar as comments on the Irish economy, and you mentioned it there on the intro here before I came in. He's more saying that Irish agriculture is a cost in itself. Like, we're an agricultural economy, and if we have the few, the Googles and the Dells and those big international companies pulling the morning, it was the farmers in recession as well. A number of years ago, we propped the country and we kept the country alive. Yeah. But I thought I'll use it as an example, because it's based with Christopher Duffy and all them driving tractors and pulling umbilical systems, spreading slurry. Like the agriculture industry, the Farm Tractor Machinery Traders Association came out with a report there in November, December, and just following what they were doing. And the Irish, on that economic report, it was 5 billion. That industry alone contributes. It has 25,000 people working in that industry in this country. It is the equivalent to tourism, which is at 6.2 million.
So near enough.
So I think Leo Varadkar, his comments, he doesn't look at the social aspect of things. We're bigger than I think. Yeah.
And we've run over time a little bit, David. Sorry to cut you short. And look, let's hope that they get some sort of joy from the EU and they can do something on the green diesel, because I know that will mean a lot. Yes. David, listen, thanks very much for coming on to us.
And thank you for your time. Thanks.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tip Today with Donal in for Fran today again. And we had a message to the show last week from Joe Hawkins, the teenage community activist in the Clonmel area. Joe, we'll say good morning to you, Joe, and we'll ask what your issue is that you were raising. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Donald. How are you? And good morning to all your listeners. It's an absolute beautiful morning in Tipperary, and
isn't it?
I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I suppose when I messaged you last week, I was on the back of an email that I sent to the 6 elected councillors in the Clonmel local electorate area. It got to do with an issue that was raised to me from people, carers, individuals who have young people with a disability, and they said that there's an extreme lack of public facilities, public toilets in the public realms across our town, and they said that young people are being disproportionately affected with the lack of public facilities for people with disabilities. And I suppose what this is doing, it's excluding people from going out in public, and they know that they can't rely on a toilet to be there, a public toilet that is adequately meeting their needs as young people with disabilities. And look, I think it's a serious enough issue that we have Tipperary County Council and planners and developers that are planning these areas, like in Clonmel with the plaza, with the new Shore Island development that's been developed, and there's this complete oversight on the council's behalf that public toilets in specific for young people with disabilities aren't being put into the planning process.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know that a lot of work has gone into that Shore Island Gardens that's going to be opening, I think they're telling us July, so definitely this summer. But there's no public toilets and disability toilets there, is there?
Yeah, like a public toilet. I think there's one public toilet in Clonmel. Quite a small toilet that it wouldn't. We all know what disabled toilets look like. They have a hoist. They have a changing bench. We all know what they look like, but we don't see them in our public spaces. Like the plaza was a complete oversight, and I'm surprised that someone hadn't been reined in because there's no public toilet. And we expect people to participate in social events in our town, yet the correct facilities aren't there. And there's a serious lack of access to public facilities in Clonmel as a whole. We see there's a vast amount of money being collected by Tipperary County Council from rates and all the various monies that they collect, and they just seem to be reluctant to reinvest into communities like Clonmel. And look, I was talking to a few people, and I won't mention anyone's name, but they asked me to raise this. And the point that I'd make, Donald, are we really an inclusive society when we say that we cannot meet the essential needs of young people with disabilities? And not just young people. I'm coming from the perspective as a young person, but any person that has a disability that wants to go out, but they're really limited. If they want to go to a festival that might be on in Clonmel, and they feel that they can't use the facilities because the facilities aren't there, well, that's an issue. And as I said, I've went and I've emailed 6 county councillors, and if any of them are listening into the show this morning, I'd hope that they would respond to my email and that they'd raise this with management of Tipperary County Council, or indeed the Borough District. We have a new district administrator coming in now, and I have sent her an email too, and I hope that she might take it on board as well in her new position. And what really needs to happen, Donald, is a county-wide audit of facilities needs to be done, and we need to really hone in now on what young people need, what people with disabilities need, and what public realms need. They need adequate facilities, public toilets for one, and public toilets that suit people with disabilities. It's a real life impact for any young person, and it's an unidentified issue, I believe, but the funding is there, and we need adequate representation on the issue.
Yeah. Look, there's a massively unfair level of planning that goes into anyone with a disability making even a short trip out. But I know that the council will say that it is extremely expensive to run and time consuming to run public toilets. Unfortunately, they get vandalised, they need management, there's costs involved. But look, you made a really good call there for this audit to be conducted. And look, I'll be down at those Clonmel Borough District meetings, so I'll keep an eye on that as well, Joe, and I'm sure you will, and hopefully we'll see some action on it in the future. Listen, Joe, that's all we have time for this morning. Thanks very much for getting in touch with us and for your time this morning, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you on the show very soon again.
Thanks very much, Don. Have a good day.
And you too.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today with myself, Donald Doyle, in for Fran Curry. Today in our second hour we will have global news a little later on. We'll be talking to former Fine Gael member John Halley. This hour before we finish up later, we'll be talking to Paul Carroll, our sports editor, about the weekend sporting action and of course Semple and Tip Cork yesterday. And we'll have our mindfulness slot with Susan O'Donoghue talking about leadership with conscious communication. But first, this hour, we have Cllr Seamie Morris on the phone. Good morning, Seamie. How are you?
Good morning, Donald.
It's a nice, fine morning up here in Nina, isn't it?
Beautiful morning, Donald. Beautiful morning.
Tell me, Seamie, you were writing a letter to the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, over the weekend. You guys are pen pals, are you?
We're pen pals. We are indeed. Well, I decided to join in the action because there was a number of Fianna Fáil TDs decided to write to Micheál Martin, and so I decided to get in the act. But I decided to add a bit of substance as to why people are actually infuriated with what's going on in Ireland at the moment, and indeed the world. So I decided to add a piece of substance to it.
Okay, and I suppose, look, this is pretty much an open letter. You've published it here on social media over the weekend. I suppose, give me a flavour of what you felt was missing, maybe, from Ryan O'Mara and his colleagues' letter.
Well, first of all, it's on Taoiseach that has been lecturing us over the last week, and I started by saying that, you know, as you look out from your ivory tower, you might wonder why the people are revolting, and here are a few things for you to consider. While you are being driven around in your taxpayer-funded car, it might be wise to refrain from lecturing those who are struggling to fill theirs. In the last 5 years, commodities have soared in price, bread up 30%, so on and so on. Meanwhile, your government's promises to tackle food inflation have disappeared as quickly as the ministers who made them. That was Neil Redmond, who said he was going to call in the supermarkets and ask them why they haven't brought down their prices. That was a number of years ago. That has to happen.
Yeah, nothing has happened on that, Seamie, has it? There has been no effort. The most recent bit was that there was a referral for cartelism, I suppose, to the CCPC, was it? And sure, nothing happened out of that.
No, nothing happened. This is a do-nothing government. And I listened to Cynthia on there a while ago. Cynthia certainly is speaking out of both sides of her mouth. She was on a radio station there today fully supporting the government. So this morning she decides that maybe the wording or the communication from government isn't right. It's Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael councillors went in and forced through a 5% rates increase on our business people this year, and they have every intention of doing the same in the budget in 2026. So the first thing I would say is action speaks louder than words. I would ask Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael not to impose a rates increase on businesses that are struggling out there, because the cost of living is going to go through the roof. And I'd also ask Cynthia and our government partners, and this all goes back to one thing, to one country, one sick country in the Middle East called Israel, who has the whole world in turmoil, and Mr. Trump led her on by the nose. The EU has a favourable trading partnership with Israel, a country that has the whole world in turmoil, a country that has every person living in Ireland facing a massive cost of food increase, and yes, the EU have refused to get rid of the favourable trading status that they have with Israel. So, I also go on then and say that, the average age of people being able to buy their own house has gone to 39, which means that our young people are not able to put a roof over their heads, but then also
That's
they're not
actually
able to start families.
Yeah, that's a frightening statistic, actually, there, Seamie, isn't it? Because at 39, I mean, people are getting married much later, settling down to have families much later. But if you can't own a home by the time you're 39, your chances of and our population is decreasing.
But this has massive consequences for us going forward. And in the middle of that, then, since 2020, the government has issued 174,000 work permits during a housing crisis, effectively pitting those new arrivals against young Irish families already struggling to find homes. This policy is driving tens of thousands of Irish people to go and live in Australia rather than live in the box room at home. So, and also in the middle of a housing boom.
In fairness, the work permits though are presumably to fill jobs that we need to be done.
But it's a vicious circle, Donald. We're bringing in people to replace Irish people leaving. And these are extremely highly educated people that are leaving the country. But they're also our future, Donald.
Yeah.
They're the people that I would look at and say, listen, they're going to live in Nina, they're going to have children, they're going to play sports, they're going to play. This is the cycle that we've always depended on. We've broken that cycle. I mean, Maureen O'Meara and them talk about breaking the social bond. This is the social bond that has been devastated by this government. And they also in the middle of a housing crisis decided to de-zone land. They've now asked us to rezone the land we de-zoned in the mid. And also, we have.
Yeah, there's actually a consultation on about rezoning land at the moment, Seamie, isn't there, at council level?
There is. I know these two sites in Nina that people had pinpointed to, that were zoned as for housing, that people had pinpointed to put family members on. And they can't now because they had to de-zone them. And those sites are not up for rezoning. It's a crazy situation. We've encouraged institutional investors, our vulture funds. Every year for the last 5 years, vulture funds or institutional investors who are paying no tax on their rent, by the way, on the money they're getting, have outbid young first-time buyers every single year for the last 5 years. What chance have our young people got? At the same time, our own Irish landlords are taxed to death, which is why they're getting out of it at the moment. And the government made housing a right only for those seeking asylum. IPAS centres are now exempt from normal planning laws, allowing a two-tier system where IPAS applicants can sue the state if not accommodated, while local people are denied planning permission because they fail to meet the local need criteria. That is just crazy. I mean, no wonder the people are mad out there. And I also want to say, Donald, I was horrified and shocked and saddened to hear Donald Young say that two members of the people that were protesting over the last week have taken their own life in the last 24 hours. That is,
yeah, look,
that's the reality.
It is shocking. If that, like, I don't. David said he had just seen that mentioned. We don't have any details of that. But look, the idea that somebody is going to do that for financial reasons, it's just awful.
This is a country that appears to have an endless supply of money, 1.2 billion in 2025. For questionable IPAS landlords, Yet rural towns are being starved of investment in infrastructure and housing. Since 2020, the government has taken 15.1 billion in energy taxes and handed back a mere 750 million euros last week as a token gesture that would appease the revolting peasants. And here's the situation that is crazy altogether. Since this government came into power, since Fianna Fáil came into power, around 2 decades ago, the country have burnt through 1.78 trillion euros of taxpayers' money. Yet we've continued to face crisis after crisis in housing, hospitals, mental health, rural crime, drugs, transport, GP access, and the overall cost of living. Now, this is a do-nothing government that are burning taxpayers' money.
Yeah, that's a long list of crises, Seamie. Where do we start on those? What do we need ultimate urgent action? I mean, you can't spread it around. Our hospitals here, especially here in North Tipperary, going into UHL, it's still not sorted out. Housing, as you say, is probably one of the biggest crises affecting ordinary people trying to get along with their lives. We have the issues you mentioned with rural crime and drugs, but even going down to what you might think is a small thing of GP access. It's only a small thing unless you can't get access to a GP and you need it.
But Donald, this is the recklessness of a government that has refused, that has decided to grow the population by 1 or 2 million people over the last 10, 15 years, and yet not put the services in place. Yet, I give you a perfect example of Nina. We have 1,000 housing applications being held up because this year, and we're supposed to have finished our wastewater treatment plant by 2024. They only started in 2025, and they will not be finished till 2029. We have social housing projects in Nina that have gone from a 4-stage process, which the government have admitted is too long, and they've decided to bring them back to a 1-stage process. The social housing projects in Nina are gone to a 6-stage process because they're trying to delay starting them. And something I asked them also in the last couple of weeks, how much does this cost the taxpayer? The fact that these houses now haven't been started, in better times, and the fact that they haven't started up to now. Housing at least went up by 30% last week at least. This is what Cllr, and the reality of what Cllr has cost us by not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I actually asked the council,
the cost of construction, you mean, Seamie, has gone up 30%.
The cost of construction has gone up 30%. Yeah. But the fact that these houses now are going to cost 30% more than when the council bought the land, and they bought all the land for these houses in different parts of Nina, can't start them because the wastewater treatment plant is full and has been full for some time. In fact, I looked at something going back to 1989 or something, and they were talking about the pressure on the
water services,
the pressure on the wastewater treatment plant in Nina, and we went back to then, and this year and still have only barely started work up there now.
Yeah, and I know that there is a little bit of movement on housing estates around the area out in Tyrone and elsewhere. I suppose, can Irish Water allow bits to get started while they're working? Is that what's going to happen?
It's a balancing act. What they're doing now is upgrading a wastewater treatment plant. So, they're on the same site. How they're going to manage it is beyond me, because we still have the waste from Ballycommon being driven around North Tipperary. So, look, I'd be very interested to know. I'm hearing of houses in Springford Meadows not being allowed to connect, even though they're finished. I'm very worried about that. I don't know how they're going to manage it. We thought when they started this time that it was going to be a 3-year project. It's gone out to a 5-year project. Honestly, our infrastructure in this country, we don't do infrastructure well. And the last but not least thing that is driving people mad, anyone that goes through Shannon Airport, are seeing American soldiers swilling pints in their uniforms. They're war machines parked on the runway. We're not a neutral country. Any pretense that we're a neutral country is gone. I mean, the amount of money that Shannon Airport are making out of wars, illegal wars around the world is incredible, and yet we pretend to be a nuclear country. All of those things are driving people insane, and that's the type of context I wanted to add to what Ryan O'Mara and Cynthia and all the rest of them were trying to pretend that they were having a war with the Taoiseach. Micheál Martin will do what he wants. He's always done what he wants. he got away with the mess up of the presidential election, and he get away with this.
Yeah, what's your view? I mean, he seems to have, from his own point of view anyway, drawn a line under it yesterday, saying he was going to lead them into the next election. Do you think he'll survive that long? Has this non-heave been and gone?
Listen, they said Dirty Hearn was the Teflon Taoiseach. Micheál Martin has more than it's doubly it's a double Teflon Taoiseach. He's totally untouchable, And Fianna Gael or Fianna Fáil have created this monster, and there's no point in them giving out. They went in last week and voted confidence in him. Effectively voted confidence in him when they voted confidence in the government. No point in them whining about it now and issuing diktats and coming on Tipp FM and saying that the communication is wrong. Action speaks louder than words. And I'll say this again to the Fianna Fáil and Fianna Gael councillors out there: do not attempt to raise the rates this year, because if they do, you'll show your true colours.
Yeah, look, the executive are saying that they won't be able to keep the services at a level that they're at now. Sure, they're already conducting, as you know, Seamie, a review at the moment to see if the inflation caused by the US-Israeli war on Iran is going to force them into cutting services for the rest of this year.
And they will cut services. And the reality is, I don't really blame the council executive. At the end of the day, local government in Ireland is very poorly funded. You were at the meeting the other day, Donald, or you came in, you were doing your service on Tipp FM, and you came in towards the end of the meeting. I pointed out at the meeting the other day that 79% of your RDF and RRDF projects that started phase one haven't seen the end up in 6 years. In other words, they haven't progressed from phase one to finish. And the amount of money it costs to go from phase one to phase two to phase three to finish it is money that's wasted. So there's 79% of the projects that are not finished.
Yeah, and actually, Seamie, you're not the only councillors that's brought that up in different districts just this month, that the length of time in getting funding for the different stages, it's just chronic, that projects that you can be talking about them for 10 years before they're finished.
Look, I think we have a very trustworthy council, to be fair to the executive. They do things well. They don't overrun on budgets. They manage everything well. They manage housing well when they can get them. But the fact of the matter is, this money should be given to the councils to spend, and rather than parts of Tipperary competing against each other to get from phase one to phase two. The money should be given to the councils, and the councils should be able to divvy it out to the municipal districts to spend the money, rather than going. And what's happening is, of course, and I've said this several times, the consultants are the new gods in this country. We cannot move a lamppost in Nina without hiring a consultant. And this is where all the money is going. I did a freedom of information request on consultant fees just on capital projects in Tipperary between 2019 and 2022. We paid 11.2 million euros to consultants in those 3 years, including money, 360,000 euros to architectural consultants for 36 social housing projects in the Nina MD area, despite the fact that we have our own architects in Tipperary County Council. That's the lunacy. That's the waste of money. And believe you me, this country is going to go bust. If Fianna Fáil have bust this country twice, they're on the road to doing it again.
Yeah, and while they're on the way to it, still no sign of the government increasing to match inflation in terms of the costs of fixing the roads, getting all the normal day-to-day bread and butter work of the council and the outdoor staff. No sign of the government recognising that they're being forced to do more with less.
Local government funding. Look at local government funding. I would ask all the councillors, I would ask all the TDs, if you want to do something right in this country, fund local government properly. Let the local government do what they're good at, which is being local government and running services in local government. Instead, everything is being put out to consultants.
Okay, yeah, I suppose with a letter like this, Seamie, will you even get a reply from the UFIG and the Taoiseach or anything like that?
Listen, it's not really my intention to get a reply done. It's my intention to get it out there on social media and just put it out there why people are so frustrated. No matter what sort of Cynthia and the Mhurchús come on and speak lovely language and all the rest of it, no matter what they say, Irish people want action. They don't want words.
But we need the Taoiseach to read your letters like yours, don't we?
We do indeed, but he's not listening to his own TD. So what hopefully have I getting? I should have given him. I don't know if he was at the game yesterday or not, but I should have handed the tip yesterday. But anyway,
He might well have been, actually. I wonder. I'll ask Paul later on this morning, Seamie, if Micheál was there or if he was spotted in the crowd. Look, Seamie, thanks a million for your time this morning. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you very much, Donald.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a million.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tippfm.com.
Now, welcome back to Tip Today, and Donal here for Fran. A couple of technical difficulties, getting a bit of feedback there, so we'll try and go back to John Halley at another time. But for now, we're going to move on to global news with Thomas Conway. Good morning, Thomas. How are you?
Good morning, Donal.
And tell me, Thomas, it must be I don't know. I suppose what's the term I'm looking for? There's too many things to choose from at the moment when we're looking at global news. It's like the old Chinese proverb of interesting times we're living in.
It certainly is. I'm just chatting with Andrew here in Clonmel about all the events and the shifting news stories. The rate at which the news cycle moves these days is extraordinary. But I suppose there is only really one place to start, and that is the Iran war. And I mean, the latest update, yesterday evening, US attacked and seized an Iranian cargo ship, the Taoiseach. This is the latest development in the Strait of Hormuz, or in the region of the Strait of Hormuz, in the Persian Gulf. And I think over the past couple of weeks, you know, we had two successive ceasefires. We obviously had the 2-week ceasefire between Iran and the US and Israel, which expires on Wednesday. There was a subsequent ceasefire in Lebanon, and that seemed to bring about, I think, a moment of opportunity. There was a little bit of momentum there, a sense that, particularly after the ceasefire in Lebanon, a sense that maybe a breakthrough could be made. But with these latest developments and the renewed hostilities and the subsequent closure of the Strait of Hormuz, I think there is a bit of a stasis. I think things are paralysed at the moment. There are supposed to be talks in Islamabad today. People are unsure if the Iranians are even going to attend that. So it is an extremely uncertain situation. And of course, we're all feeling the consequences in terms of price rises on the price of oil and gas. And I think there is room for a breakthrough, but I think it will depend on what happens over the next few days.
Yeah, the ceasefire due to expire on Wednesday night. They were hoping talks would start this evening, but is there even a chance of that happening at the moment, Thomas, with the newest standoff?
It depends largely on whether the Ukraine or the Iranians decide to attend and go to those talks in Islamabad. But you're correct to say, I mean, this latest standoff in the Gulf is extraordinary. I mean, Trump saying that the US effectively blew up the engine room of that Taoiseach vessel, and that would point to a level of renewed tension between both sides. Very difficult to see how they can then come together and try to engage in any sort of peace negotiations when this is happening at sea. Now, J.D. Vance has travelled to Pakistan, so the US has sent a delegation there.
Oh, right. I didn't know Vance was going again, but he has travelled, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, the word I have is that Vance is travelling or is going to travel over the course of today. There was a sense, I think, over the past few days that the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, had maybe gone out a little bit too quickly in suggesting that these talks would occur. He was reined in a little bit by forces in the Iranian regime, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But, Trump has renewed his threats to, bomb, Iranian gas facilities and bridges.
Power plants and bridges, even though it is a clear breach of international law.
Yeah, so you would have to think the Iranians urgently need to come to the table or are anxious to come to the table. I mean, as you're correct to say, I mean, Trump has threatened war crimes, and those are... it's an appalling prospect that he would effectively rage, and the subsequent or the previous tweet that a civilization would die. I mean, those are shocking things coming out of a US president, but this is what we have become accustomed to over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I suppose there's two sides to this story as well. I don't think anyone could miss the irony of the Iranians calling the American attack on the ship yesterday an act of horrific international piracy, when the whole problem is that they're attacking ships trying to travel through the Straits as well.
Yeah, and that must be said. And I mean, the Iranian regime, Iran has long been considered a rogue state in the Middle East. But I think what we've seen over the past couple of weeks, it has successfully used its leverage, which is the Strait of Hormuz. And by blocking that critical waterway, through which 20% of the world's seaborne crude oil travels, it can do enormous damage to the global economy. There are theories circulating that Iran is kind of emerging as a real power as a result of that. It seems to have discovered its main point of leverage, which is the Strait of Hormuz, and used it effectively. But the irony is very evident. I mean, as I say, Iran, long considered a rogue state. It sponsors proxies like Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen. So there is a clear degree of irony there. But there is still no word in terms of the fate of Iran's nuclear program. I mean, there's supposed to be around 400 kg of highly enriched uranium somewhere underneath the mountains in the city, near the city of Isfahan. There's no word on whether that's retrievable. Trump refers to it as the nuclear dust. He has speculated that the US will go in and or that the Iranians are willing to give up that enriched uranium, that nuclear material.
Well, he says that, Thomas, but wasn't there a quote from someone high up, a spokesperson, saying that it's that the enriched uranium is as precious to them as the soil of Iran itself, or something like that?
Yeah, there have been words to that effect. And another point I would make, which has been made by a lot of experts on Iran, is you cannot unlearn what you have learned. So a lot of these Iranian scientists and that now have the capability to enrich uranium to a weapons-grade level, which would make it capable of producing a nuclear bomb. And you cannot unlearn that knowledge. You cannot simply bomb the program out of existence when that expertise is there. So look, I mean, it's in nobody's interest that Iran race for a bomb, but I think the incentive to do so has actually been increased by these US and Israeli attacks. Now, it's going to be, I mean, it's very much up in the air at the moment. The only one that's winning from the war is probably Russia, which has increased its oil revenues and revenues from gas and that.
But it had some of the US sanctions lifted.
Indeed. So there are countries benefiting from this. China was said to have played a role in brokering those first set of talks. China is still somewhat of a bystander in this whole process. It's uncertain what will happen over the next few days, but once that ceasefire runs out on Wednesday or whenever that deadline expires, I think anything can happen when you have Donald Trump in power.
Yeah, I suppose and I haven't had a chance to do much of a deep dive on it, Thomas, but I know you've been looking at it. Where are the likely sticking points? Obviously, Iran doesn't want to give up the enriched uranium, and it's sort of a red line for Donald Trump that there can be no chance of them developing a nuclear weapon. What are the other sticking points that are likely to block negotiations going any further if they do sit down for talks?
I think, as we alluded to there, the future of the Strait of Hormuz is critical, and what type of management that will fall under in future. Iran has looked for kind of a set of protocols to govern maritime traffic travelling through that strait. It is essentially looked for itself and Oman, which sits across the Gulf from them and borders the strait, to be responsible for the flow of maritime traffic. That will not be acceptable to the United States, and I would expect much of the globe, because it allows Iran effectively to hold everyone else hostage. If it has control over the Strait of Hormuz entirely, we see its capability to paralyse the global economy. So that really, along with the nuclear program, is the main sticking point. But I mean, you can go back to the 2015 nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was negotiated by the Obama administration and Trump subsequently pulled out in 2018. I mean, that took around 20 months to negotiate. It only addressed the nuclear issue. It was specifically or exclusively the nuclear issue
around
which it tackled around the weapons program.
The nuclear program, we say they denied that there was a weapons program. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. But when they're enriching uranium to such a high degree, you would have to suspect that manufacturing weapons is one of the objectives.
Well, it's the only objective for enriching it up to 60%. Is that not the case?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, and I'm not a nuclear scientist, but, when you enrich uranium to that degree, I mean, everyone was suspicious of Iran. I think it was very clear whether they were heading or where they were heading. And with an increasing number of countries with nuclear weapons at the moment, that will lead the drive towards nuclearization and will prompt other countries. I mean, if Iran were to attain a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia across the Gulf will almost certainly race for a bomb itself. Other countries in the Middle East will follow likewise. As it is at the moment, the only country with nuclear capability in the Middle East is Israel, and they're very quiet about their nuclear program. Very little is known about it. And so
but it's accepted, and we know that they do have the nuclear weapons, which is part of the reason that themselves and Iran are at each other's throats, and Iran wants the same, maybe not deterrent, but wants the same weapons. It's a mini arms race there. And you were mentioning that Trump's actions are potentially leading to another global nuclear arms race.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the chart in front of me here. Russia is the largest nuclear power as it stands. It's followed by the US, and then you've China, France, the UK. There's others, India, Pakistan, Israel, we mentioned there. The most interesting example really is North Korea. Because, I mean, Kim Jong-un, widely obviously regarded, I think, as a madman, a tyrant, really, raced for a bomb and successfully manufactured nuclear weapons. It is a major deterrent for other countries. A country militarily will not touch North Korea now because it has that nuclear capability. And it is a guarantee of security. But we're living in a world now in which the traditional protocols and regulations and treaties have largely broken down. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1971 is in danger really of disintegrating because so many countries are racing for nuclear weapons. It is a very perilous world we're living in. And as war drags on in the Gulf, there are kind of even more reasons for Iran to seek a nuclear device, and its program might be somewhat smaller. It might be even more secretive than what we had previously known. But I suspect that in the future, unless there is some kind of binding agreement that allows Iran access to world markets and integrates it into the world economy, I suspect that many hardliners within the regime will be very intent on developing a nuclear capability.
Yeah, and I'm interested in this idea that with Trump disavowing the US's, I suppose, peacekeeper role or protective role in the world order and going America first and America only in a lot of cases, or Trump only if you want to be highly critical of him. But that's leaving people to say, well, if America isn't going to protect us and we don't have the backup of the threat of their nuclear arsenal, then we need one of our own.
Yeah, I think that's precisely it, because a lot of these countries, the likes of South Korea, Japan, European countries, would have existed under the American, or do exist under the American nuclear umbrella. America is effectively the guarantor of their security. And now with an increasingly unstable and unpredictable America, and with a capricious president in the White House, Donald Trump, the incentive to develop. We see with Europe, I mean, there are talks now that Germany will look to develop a nuclear capability. There is increasing militarization across Europe, and that's because we're living, and across the world really, and that's because we're living in a very unstable global environment. And you know, nuclear weapons are as I say, effective in terms of creating a deterrent effect. They're a huge deterrent. Now, there is a doctrine called mutually assured destruction, which kind of states that, you know, if somebody launches a nuclear strike, then there will be retaliation, and that will lead to mass destruction. So the consequences, and you know, it's a very scary prospect. But you're correct to say that yes, you know, as America's security role diminishes, more countries will look to develop nuclear weapons of their own.
Okay, so we need to keep an eye on not only the issues between Israel and Iran, which have driven this whole problem, but keep an eye on who else is looking to develop nuclear weapons, as if we didn't have enough to worry about, Thomas.
Well, indeed, I know. And, you know, the topic we're going to talk about next, the Sudanese civil war, is an example of another conflict which is, you know, ravaging a part of Africa, a supposedly beautiful part of Africa, of the African continent. And, you know, you've all these wars going on across the globe. You've a race towards nuclear weapons. It's hugely worrying. It is. I mean, I was just chatting off air, and we were discussing to Andrew here. You know, it's extraordinary times we're living in. You know, it's very rare you would have a president of the United States. It's unprecedented to have a president of the United States acting in this manner. But it's really influencing the course of events across the world in many different theatres, from the Middle East to the Pacific to Europe. So it is hugely worrying. You're correct.
Yeah, and you mentioned Sudan there. That war, which isn't getting anywhere near the level of coverage Ukraine was getting, or obviously now the Middle East with Gaza and now Iran. But there's been a massive humanitarian crisis as a result of this civil war, which, as we say, is now into its fourth year.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, the third anniversary was last Wednesday. I have a figure here in front of me, 60,000 people killed. The reality is, I think it's impossible to estimate. It probably stretches up to 150,000 and beyond. And it's worth reminding people the kind of origins of this civil war. So essentially...
Absolutely. I was going to ask you to go through it because, like I say, it's getting very little coverage, and most people won't know a hell of a lot about what is happening there and how it all started. So would you take us through some of the main points?
Yeah, it evolved from a power struggle between two warring generals. One was the head of the Sudanese armed forces, General Burhan, and the other was a guy called Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, leader of a militia known as the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF. And after the fall of Omar al-Bashir, who was kind of a long-time dictator, he ruled Sudan since the 1990s. He departed power in 2019. There was a power struggle between these two generals. It eventually escalated into a full-scale civil war in 2023. The RSF on one side managed to take command of kind of the western half of the country, the Darfur region, including the city of El Fasher. Now, there was an appalling massacre in El Fasher in which it's estimated that at least 6,000 people died over just a couple of days, according to the United Nations, and it is said to have borne the defining characteristics of genocide. So, you know, the RSF are responsible for appalling atrocities. On the other side, then, you have the Sudanese armed forces who retook control of Khartoum, the Sudanese capital. And Sudan is quite a big country geographically. Khartoum would be more to the central plains or to the east. So the country is effectively split. It's not the first time. I mean, South Sudan seceded from Sudan in 2011, so the country has been split up before. It's a highly fractious civil war. It's very difficult to know where it will go from here. There's about 34 million people. That's about 2/3 of the Sudanese people need humanitarian assistance. So, you can go into all sorts of shocking statistics. Famine ravaging parts of the country, people with severe acute malnutrition expected to increase to up to 800,000. So, it is an awful situation. There is international intervention as well, or international influence. The UAE, and this is widely known, this isn't some sort of conspiracy theory, the UAE is long thought to be supporting one side, the RSF. The Sudanese armed forces on the other side are supposed to be sponsored, I suppose, or funded by Egypt. So the two rival powers are being backed by outside forces, and that is perpetuating the conflict on the ground. But, it's probably fair to say it's bloodier than what we've seen in Gaza, and Gaza was absolutely appalling. It's probably a different type of war, but there are all sorts of war crimes and probably crimes against humanity going on.
Yeah, no, it sounds horrific over there, Thomas. I suppose, is there any prospect of a peace deal? Is Trump going to go in and sort it all out?
Yeah, well, I mean, how many wars has he bragged about solving? 8?
It must be up to 20 or 30.
Yeah, I would imagine it's in those in those figures. Yeah, it's a conflict that doesn't seem to have occupied the US's attention. I've heard very little commentary on it. It's been described as an abandoned crisis. So it's not so much the world has forgotten about it. I think
that was from a UN official.
Yeah, that was from a UN official. I think because it's number one, it's quite complex. I mean, I've outlined it there, and probably not very well, but it's difficult enough to understand. The second thing is it's Africa, and I think people are almost fatigued by stories of war and sadness from Africa, and that shouldn't be the case. But I suppose Ukraine is closer to us. Gaza, has a connection, or a lot of people will feel connected to Palestine. Sudan is far off. It's in the distance, and certainly it has fallen down the news agenda. It's hugely underreported. But I can't, I wish I could proffer a solution, but I can't really see where this conflict is going. Hopefully it will be resolved, but it will take a long time to rehabilitate Sudan, not only the people psychologically, but to rebuild the country as it stands. And there is going to have to be political stability for that to happen.
Yeah, resources-wise, Thomas, because, look, most of the time when we see wars, particularly in places like Africa, there are vast resources there that people are essentially fighting over. I believe there's diamonds and oil and stuff. Is there an issue there that's going to prolong it because people want control of these things?
Yeah, and I think that is often an element of these African conflicts. There is oil and gas in parts of the country. You're right to say there's diamonds there as well. And one of the leaders, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, the leader of the RSF, is said to be a very rich man. I think from his endeavours in the diamond trade. I stand to be corrected, I think it's the diamond trade. But yes, so resources are a huge factor, and you often hear about the resource curse. Countries which are endowed with vast amounts of natural resources, be it oil, gas, etc., just aren't able to utilise them in a way that would increase prosperity and increase the standard of living in the country. And I think Sudan is another prime example of that.
Yeah, okay. Listen, Thomas, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I know we had a few more bits on the list, but maybe we'll come back to them another time. We do need to go to news shortly, so thanks again, Thomas, and we'll talk to you.
Thank you, Donald. Thank you very much.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Now, welcome back to Tip Today with Donald Doyle here in for Fran, as usual, and please be patient with me. I'm only in here now and again. Just quickly on the text line, a little bit of a suggestion. Fran normally says who it was at the end of an interview. Apologies, I'll try and get that in. They missed out who was slating Fianna Fáil. Was it Seamie Morris? And indeed it was. John in Rossgrey says he'd love to know where all the car tax money is going. Well, it's going into central government coffers. It's not ring-fenced for roads maintenance or anything like that. It's part of our general budget, is my understanding. Why would anybody disagree with the establishing Department of Government Efficiency? It's astonishing, says one listener, but I doubt anyone would like Elon Musk coming in here and trying to cut services. I'm not sure that's what anyone wants to see. We are not a neutral country, another texter says, but we are a dictatorship country. Obviously not factually correct, but I get your sentiment. Seamie says we're a do-nothing government, says our next texter, peeing off every hard-working, tax-paying citizen no longer qualifies as doing something, says somebody with their tongue in their cheek. And now somebody critical of the Taoiseach does not even know what our flag means. Insult real Irish people. I'm not sure what the meaning behind that is, but the Taoiseach was talking about the flag, that the Irish tricolour should be a symbol of unity, not division. And this person didn't like his comments. Somebody is saying, good morning, Donald. Great insight into the farmers' struggles and the constant stress they have. That was our interview with David Young earlier, laying out the position that so many farmers find themselves in at the moment. And quickly, another one or two. They were all on holidays to start with. That's criticism of the government over being off on their Easter break while the fuel protests were underway, I should say. And there are no anti-immigration protests in Ireland at any point. This is where Liberals fail to understand. The protests are anti-mass immigration. Try to understand the difference and we can all move forward. That is a fairly semantic difference you're pointing out there, but we'll take your point for now. And anyway, now we do have to move on. Sorry if I haven't gotten to your texts earlier today, but important to keep us all involved. And we are going to move on now. We have our normal feature with our relationship expert Susan O'Donoghue, who is in studio down in Clonmel. Good morning, Susan. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing, Donald?
I'm very good. Look, I'm pretty well, even with a bit of criticism from our listeners, but we can take that on the chin. That's what we like to see, a little bit of back and forth. Susan, are you weighing in on the politics with your theme for this morning's feature?
I would. I won't get into the politics of it, but I definitely think that leadership with conscious communication is something that maybe we need to look at, in every sense of the word.
There's a little bit of talk recently about how people take on leadership roles, how they might exclude others, and whether or not, that's the big one, whether or not people are, let's just say our leaders are listening to how people are doing. Tell me a bit about conscious communication and what you mean by that.
Sure. If we look at conscious communication, it doesn't matter. It's somebody who has the care of another. So leaders would have the care of another, parents would have the care of another. It doesn't, necessarily just, like in workplaces, obviously, that's a real obvious one. And this topic has been researched because it means money in the, I suppose, in the organisational sense when we're looking at big companies and big organisations. It's all about how do you get the best out of your employees. And this has become a huge thing around how we communicate with people. And I think it makes sense. It makes a difference. You know, if people feel happy and they feel heard and they feel listened to, obviously you're going to be able to work better with them. And I suppose communication is not about getting through to another. It's about getting through to yourself. So the relationship that's most important is the relationship the leader has with themselves, and how do they feel about what they're doing, and are they being true to themselves? There's a lot in it, you know. There's a huge amount, so we'll just go through a few bits today. And communion,
very good.
Yep, communion means union with self. So that's where the communication comes into it. Communion means union with self. So we look at open versus defensive communication. So defensive communication invites reflection on relationship with the self and others. So in other words, if I find myself, you know, getting my back up or feeling like, you know, I need to blame someone or shame someone or even blame or shame myself, that's the opportunity then to have a look at what's actually happening for me. What's going on inside for me? What are my feelings trying to tell me? Because that's a feeling, isn't it? When we feel like, oh my God, I have to blame someone, or, you know, and it's kind of nearly a fear-driven thing. And I'm always saying that whether unconscious communication or unconscious anything is driven by fear. And I think, you know, just now I don't want to get into the politics of it because I'm not a politician.
I don't away from the specifics.
But even what happened,
people getting defensive and starting out from a defensive
and
position.
It's driven by fear. So, you know, when you look at what happened there, you know, 2 weeks ago or whatever, there was real fear out there. You know, fear of whatever, fear of not being able to pay your bills, fear of not being able to keep your business going, fear of, you know, whatever for them, because your response wouldn't be like that, or your reaction wouldn't be like that unless it was fear driven. So unconscious communication is always driven by fear. So, you know, I'm not saying that was unconscious, because they obviously thought a lot about it and they felt like that was the only way they could get through. So then it's about how now are we going to sit with each other and speak with each other, not to or at each other. And there's a huge difference between speaking with somebody or speaking to or at them. And I think the with somebody is the listening. So the most important thing about communication is listening. And am I listening to myself, what's coming up for me? And do I give the space and time to listen to another? And am I listening without interruption to hear and not to respond? That's big, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very different to what people might think of it when you say listening, because you're talking about it as a kind of a two-way thing, that you have to listen to your own, I suppose, the feelings that you're having or the responses that you want to make, but hold off on making them.
Yeah, well, it's about listening to yourself. What's coming up for me, and how am I going to take care of myself in this now? And taking care of yourself requires boundaries, right? So a boundary is for me, not against another. So if I'm putting a boundary in place because, say, you know, I feel I'm being attacked, or I feel that I'm not being heard or being seen, or, you know, I'm getting lost in the system, because a lot of the time it's the system that's wrong. You know, it's not people it's the system that we're in that we create. And of course, people create systems. So it's about, can I look and reflect on myself, my own part, and what can I do around the system to help people, you know, because it's about communicating with each other. You know, I don't think, you know, anybody goes out there and gets that upset or gets that angry for no reason. All behaviour makes sense. So, and I suppose, you know, staying separate from what a person says is huge, because remember, what I say is about me and for me. I'm after creating it. Right, so I create my own behaviours, I create my own feelings, it's all about me. So if I try and blame or shame another, that's a reflection on me, it's not a reflection on the other. So it's a hard thing to do when you start first, because that's not how the society tells us what we need to be doing, right? But that is the basis of it. Not to take on what other people say, feel or do. You can listen to them and you can know that that's about them, and then you can try and sort out and try and understand where they're coming from, but it's not a reflection on you. So if somebody starts blaming somebody else, it's a real defensive behaviour. It's a real sign that it's fear-driven. So there's a huge amount in it, and I know there is, and it's a lot easier in theory than it is to put into practice. But once you start putting it into practice and you separate yourself out from other people's stuff, right, for want of a better word, right?
Other people's stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
let it with them. Let them hold on to their own baggage. Don't take it on board. There's a huge sense of freedom in that when we can do that. And it's one of the greatest gifts I think you can give yourself, because it takes that weight off you that you're not responsible for how other people feel. You know, you're responsible for how you feel yourself. And it's a real good lesson to learn. And not to get enmeshed with other people's defensive communication. And then...
What do you mean by enmeshed?
Enmeshed means staying separate from it. You know, because if I get drawn in, just say we're sitting here today and you say something to me like... oh my, just something simple, maybe like, oh, you shouldn't have said that before, or why'd you do that for, or, you know, like it's kind of a blame game or a shame. If I feed into that now, that's enmeshment. Now I'm getting caught up in your stuff, basically. So how now am I going to stay separate from that, and how am I going to mind my own business? And a lot of the time I see it as having a hula hoop around each person, right? I'm not going into your hula hoop and you're not coming into mine. Yeah, that's the way I see it, yeah? So you need to mind your own space and mind your own boundaries, and you need to know what comes from you is about you and for you, and therefore what comes from another is about them and for them, right?
And how do we do that, though, Susan? Is there methods, techniques, or like what? Like it's one thing saying that we shouldn't get enmeshed in other people's stuff, but at the same time, if you're having a conversation with someone, our tendency is to do that. It
is, because that's the society we grew up in, and that's how we learned how to interact with another. But the thing about it is if I keep doing that, if we keep doing the same thing over and over again, the same behaviours, like nothing changes. So if I want to change, say I meet this person and, you know, we always end up having a bit of a tiffle or whatever, right? And I'm like, it's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's uncomfortable to have an argument with someone the whole time. Like, you end up not wanting to meet them. So how now am I going to mind myself in that? And that's part of it, is by becoming conscious that I'm not responsible for how they feel, and they're not responsible for how I feel. You know, so how am I going to separate out that what they say is about them? So therefore, if I'm conscious of that and I know that what another says is about them and nothing to do with me, then I'm going to be able to practice, all right, I can feel this coming up again in me now because this person is coming at me again. But I know that that's about them, so I'm going to hand it back to them. Consciously say that to yourself. Now, it takes a bit of practice, right? Because we've been doing the other for so many years that it's going to take a bit of practice. But realistically, the one where we get enmeshed and the one where we can't stay separate is the one that we've learnt along the way. Okay? We're not born like that. We learn that. It's a behaviour that we learn to take on other people's stuff, because you'll always hear like, oh, sure, they're great people, sure, they're always minding someone else, or sure, they're great people because they always take everything on. You know, the sense of that. So it's not about taking everything on. Of course you can be helpful and, you know, help another out. There's nothing wrong with that. Just as long as you realise that you do it because you want to do it, not because there's a sense of, I have to do it. There's a big difference, isn't there? You know, if I want to do something and, you know, I say that's great, you know, I don't feel pushed into it or obligated to do it. You know, there's a sense of wanting to do it. And when I want to do something, it makes the doing, the other person and the doing of it. I don't feel like, oh my God, do I have to go do that again now today? Or, oh my God, sure, the dread of it, going up there today to do this for this person. It takes that out of it. So now when I'm doing something, I'm doing it because I want to. And there's a big difference. And a lot of us, that's the thing where it comes to, again, saying no. You know, a lot of us can't say no. It's a very hard word for us. So that in itself, to learn that, is hugely powerful. To be able to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that today.
Again, but again, easier said than done, though, isn't it?
But it's practice. It's practice.
Well, society tells us we should try and help. We should try and improve things. If someone comes to us with an issue and we want, it seems very cold, even when we're talking about it, to say, no, I can't help you there, but I'm listening, and here's what I think.
Yeah, but you can say it in a kind way too. Do you know, you don't have to say, no way, I'm not doing that. Or, you can be kind around it. But the thing about it is you said should there, Donald, yeah? And any time there's a should, could, must, have to and ought to, yeah? You're gone into the unconscious. Yeah, but that's the unconscious part of it, and it's lovely. And it's to catch yourself in those moments. That's how we become more conscious. And that's how we get to the place of being separate from somebody else. And then what's really important is when you're speaking with somebody, it's about using the I, right, in the say the sentence rather than the you. And that changes the whole take of the sentence. I'm now taking responsibility for myself. So if I say, I really would love if you could help me today, or my need is that, I need to get this done, and I would like to ask you if you could help me today. I need your help. Is that okay? Now I'm taking responsibility for my own needs. I'm not pushing them on the other, right? But if I say, you know what, I need you now to go out there and I need you to do this, that and the other, it's an order, isn't it? It's not a request. So when you do that to somebody, automatically, most of the time, their defence will go up as well. Right? Because when the unconscious defensive behaviour meets an unconscious defensive behaviour, there's no resolving it. Right? It's just defence meets defence, and there's no resolution at the end of it. So it's very important to learn how to word things properly, because our words make a difference, a huge difference. And I suppose the first act of communication, as I said, is to listen to yourself. Yeah, and, to look at the blocks to listening to somebody, the blocks to effective listening, yeah, to be able to sit with somebody and listen to them. What are the blocks within myself to be able to do that? How does it feel for me to sit there and absolutely say nothing, just listen and hear what the person, and try to get an understanding of what's happening for them and where they're coming from, because we'll never truly know 100%, only they will. But it's lovely. There's nothing nicer, I feel myself, than to have somebody who listens without judgment.
Yeah, we're not getting a lot of that recently.
No.
And look, I know you don't want to go into specifics, but do you, as a relationship expert, when you see, I suppose, debates, discussions, peace talks, if we want to bring it even further, being carried out in certain ways, do you put your head in your hands and go, look, you're starting from the wrong place here?
Well, look, it all starts with the top, right? Because it kind of flows down from there, right? So if we have leaders who are there who don't take time to reflect on their own stuff and don't look at their own behaviour, we're in trouble. Yeah, we're in trouble, because if I can't look at my own stuff and I'm in charge of another, or certainly a lot of people, as it is around the world, if I have the care of a lot of people and I'm not able or capable or don't have the inclination to look at my own stuff, we're in trouble, because my own defensive behaviour then, right, the unconscious stuff, is going to come into that. And that's what that is when you see, leaders blaming each other and, these snarky remarks at each other. It's lack of being conscious. It's lack of, taking responsibility for what happens. It's all that built into one. It's exactly what I'm after saying. If I'm saying you are the one at fault, you are the country that's doing this, you are the leader that's causing this, and where's my part in it? That's the reflective part. Where's my part in it? What's happening here for me? And I understand, there's power play and there's the whole lot, but it's not effective. What it does is it causes more chaos, and we've seen that, haven't we? We've seen that, if we don't communicate.
We certainly have seen miscommunications and misunderstandings and people talking across purposes in Irish public life in recent weeks. Can leaders recover from that, even if they're the one who's made the gaffe, who's been caught out not listening? Let's say, what's the road back to getting everything on an even keel in a relationship? Say between a leader and a group, or between a politician and the country, or whoever it might be.
Yeah, I suppose it's to get that understanding of what conscious, I suppose, relationship with clear communication and direct communication is about. It's about looking at yourself first, and it's always about looking at yourself first. It's having space for reflection. And the thing about it is I'm not going to look at myself unless it's safe to do so. So unless we give our leaders a space where they can look at their own behaviour and look at what's happening and try and have an understanding of how their behaviour is impacting others. And like all behaviour makes sense, like that's known forever, right? But the thing about it is do we truly understand what that means? Like all behaviour makes sense. So, whatever a leader reacting, and coming out and blaming others or doing, there's something going on for that person as well. So it's about having the non-judgment there as well, to be able to sit with that person and think, oh my goodness, what, I'd love to know what's happening for you. To be curious around it, to have that like lovely curious inquiry about how is it for you. Looking to understand, that's the key. It's about, giving somebody the space to understand. And generally what I find in my own practice is when I sit with another, I need to be in a good place to do that. But when I sit with another and I give them space for reflection and I give them a bit of space and maybe feedback their words to them, they'll come up with their own solutions. That's the thing, because they're the expert on themselves.
And Susan, would you be, I'm not sure if you'd be in that position, but would you have been in a position with a leader of a business or a group or an organisation who is asking you how to create a better culture of communication or conscious communication? What would you tell? Have you been in that situation, I suppose, first of all, and what is the message there?
The message is, look, what I provide is I provide a safe space where someone can come and there's no blame, there's no shame, there's no judgment, there's no criticism, and there's also no advice. Yeah, because advice to me is like a vice. It squeezes the life out of people, right? And the thing about it is they'll come back and they'll say, you told me to do that and it didn't work, right? So I make suggestions if it's needed, but generally what I find is when I sit with somebody and I let them reflect and I give them that space to be able to reflect, and we'll sit there and I have a signposts, I suppose you could call them, and different ways in which maybe to support the person. And when they have a chance to reflect and look at what's going on for them, they come up with their own solutions. And that's what it's about. It's about, because we're so criticised and, people see us for our behaviour. They don't see us for who we are. And we're not our behaviour, okay? Our behaviour is something that comes from our story that we create out of fear a lot of the times, right? Especially our unconscious behaviours are definitely out of, fearful situations. And growing up in the family of origin, we adapt these ways of surviving. If you want to call it that, surviving the family home until we get then and move out to the wider world, to school and all that, and then we go on to work, and we bring them with us the whole way. When we get to 18 and we move out of the family home and we're not so much in the school setting anymore, what happens then is we don't necessarily need them anymore, but we bring them with us because there's no safe space to look at them. Yeah, and think, is this really working for me anymore, this behaviour? I often say to people, did you ever go out one night and, meet people or go into the office or, at home or something, even with your kids, and say something and you're cringing after it. You're thinking, oh my God, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I had, you know what I mean? If I could take it back. And it's, once it's said, then that's the opportunity now, when that comes up for you, when that feeling comes up for you, to go into your own stuff and have a look. But sometimes it's not safe to do that. So we just push on and keep going. Because we haven't seen an example either, most of us in our life, of somebody who's working on themselves to that level where they want to create a conscious space for themselves and the people around them. And that's what leadership is all about. Leadership is about reflection. And I mean, I reflect most days on myself. I think, oh my God, how is that for me now? Am I okay? I'd say I ask myself maybe 20 times a day, is it all right for me? Maybe more. I don't really count them. But it's very important to do that. It's very important to check in with yourself and see how you're doing and what's sitting right for me. And our feelings are our best indicator. They let us know if things are wrong or if we need to have a look, because those really, what I call emergency feelings that come up, they're really strong. The ones like hate, envy, greed, the ones where you want to lash out at somebody, or anger. Anger is a really good one. Yeah, so when that comes up, that's letting us know what's going on inside for us, and it's screaming out to us, right? Because we can't ignore it. Yeah, so it's screaming out to us to check in with ourselves. And generally, what most of us do is we'll actually go in and blame ourselves, or we'll go out and blame somebody else, right? And what that does is it's just that same cycle again continuing. So if I want to see a change, if I want to, if I'm very angry or very scared or very whatever the feeling is, if I don't start checking in and looking at it in a different way, if I don't start looking at it as my friend, right? Because most people just want to get rid of them feelings because they feel uncomfortable. But if I don't start looking at it as my friend, it's something that's trying to alert me to things I need to have a look at, right? I'll never move on. I'll just stay in the same space. So that's the first thing, is to be able to have a check-in with yourself and see how you're doing. And once I start doing that for myself, it's automatic for everybody else.
Okay,
because I have it
good.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. So there should be lots of people who could take a bit of advice on this and learn to listen and communicate better. But for now, Susan, I'll stay out of your stuff and I won't touch your hula hoop for a while. And we'll leave it there and we'll talk to you again soon.
No problem, Dolan.
Thanks a million.
Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, and we'll be back after Bishop Yog. That was Susan Donoghue, our relationship expert there.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On, now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tip Today with me, Donal, in for Fran again today. We're joined now by our sports editor, Paul Carroll, who's had a busy weekend, as ever. Paul, first thing I have to ask, because it came up earlier, was Micheál Martin at the Cork match yesterday?
I don't know, I didn't see him anyway.
You didn't spot him in the crowd?
No.
He wasn't daring the crowd to see what the Tip supporters thought?
No, well, I don't know, I didn't see him anyway. But
you were busy looking at the actual action on the pitch.
Yeah, my eyesight isn't that good now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, disappointing result for Tipperary, 29 points to 122.
In front of a big home crowd.
Yeah, there was a good support there, 44,000 people there, a good Cork crowd as well. Just Tip a bit below par, particularly the third quarter. It's kind of been much talked about already. I think Cork outscored Tip 11 points to 1 in that period, so that was real
revenge for what happened in the second half of the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, I'd imagine their half-time kind of team talk would have been, lads, we need to go out in this second half and put in a performance from a Cork point of view. And they did. I don't think we can have any complaints from a Tipperary point of view. It was kind of weird walking out of Thurles yesterday. There was no big moment or controversial thing you were talking about. It was just kind of oh yeah, Cork were the better team and they won by 4 points. Back. Yeah, so there was no real controversy or anything like that. We were just beaten by the better team that third quarter. Tip finished fairly well. The subs kind of got into it. Darius Stakelum scored a point, set up the goal for Alan Tynan, which was a great finish. And we done well to keep it to 4 points for a finish and be in the game in injury time, because we were down by 9 points at one stage in the second half and it looked like this could be any score. So, just a little bit of sharpness was off for Tipperary. Some of the short passing, the puck outs, I thought we kind of struggled with. We were hitting a lot of ball down on top of Rob Downey, who's 6'7" and plays like he's 6'7". He's very good in the air, and his brother Owen as well. They were really good at the back for Cork. So we just struggled to secure possession in the forwards, and it was just a struggle in that second half. So below par for Tipperary, but as is the nature of the Munster Championship now, they have to completely forget about yesterday, because they're back out next Sunday against Waterford, and that's going to be must win for both teams. Yeah.
Look, and they're down in Waterford, aren't they? Next weekend,
which is a place we actually never won in the Championship. So it's
really?
Okay. So now Walsh Park has only been done up.
There's a little bit of a mental hurdle there as well.
Yeah, well, I'd say they've only played a couple of times down there anyway since it's been done up. But in 2022, 2024, it was a draw. So it's going to be a massive game for Waterford as well, because they lost to Cllr yesterday. Yeah. What was it, 421 to 233? So I'd expect a a different game down in Waterford next Sunday in terms of probably maybe a bit more high scoring than we saw yesterday hopefully from a Tipperary point of view anyway.
Yeah. How I suppose give us a sense of where it leaves Tip now and what they need to do in the Munster Championship.
Yeah, so we're second from bottom now. Waterford we're beaten by 6 points, so Tip bet by 4 for a finish. So we're second from bottom, but 3 games to go. We're away to Waterford next Sunday. Then we've 2 weeks off. We're at home to Cllr on a Saturday night, and then the following Sunday away to Limerick. All those fixtures, as I mentioned yesterday in commentary, are fixtures we've never won in the Munster round robin since it's come in, since 2018. We haven't beaten Cork at home, that's continued. We haven't beaten Waterford away, we haven't beaten Limerick away, and we haven't beaten Cllr at home. So we need to start changing those over the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah, there needs to be a big change.
Yeah.
Tell me, I only heard the one clip from Liam Cahill today. What was he saying afterwards?
Yeah, it was a mix of kind of just a little bit off it. Cork had the better energy levels. He felt, I think, that Cork were in the league final just a couple of weeks ago, and that done them no harm, he said, in terms of their match sharpness. They're probably just that little bit more up to the pace of it than Tipperary were at times, and just that kind of costly third quarter period was one of them. So, but it's funny, if this was a kind of a game where Tip weren't out for 4 or 5 weeks, Liam probably would have been more upset after the game yesterday. But because it's such a quick turnaround in his post-match interview, it was very much like, we have to park that now and get ready for Waterford, and it's kind of all looking forward rather than looking back too much.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so we'll have to keep an eye on how things go at Waterford. Is it must win?
It's pretty much must win, I would say. Yeah, it's you're not out if you lose, but it's certainly an awful lot harder if you lose. So it's as close to must win as you can get in round 2 of the Munster Championship.
Yeah. Of course, there was other games on yesterday. A doubleheader in Thurles, wasn't it?
Yeah, brilliant win for the Tipp Camogie team. They beat Cork in the Munster Senior Camogie quarter-final, 118-2-9. Very entertaining game. Some brilliant performances from Tipp. Tipp actually just hurled really well in this game. Emer McGrath finished with 1-4, but they'd scores all around the pitch, and that was a huge boost, because sometimes you might be reliant on an Emer McGrath or some of the other players to get all the scores, where it was a fine spread. Corinne Blair was really good in her return to action at wing-back. She scored 2 points. Kate Ralph in midfield scored 2 points. Grace O'Brien from Nina with 3 points from play. But it was the substitutes that really made the difference. Emer Heffernan with 2 points, and Jean Kelly got 2 brilliant scores late on in the game. Really out on the sideline inside the 14. Brilliant scores that kind of propelled Tipperary forward. So into a semi-final now, the Munster Senior Camogie Championship. They play Limerick before the Cork versus Limerick game next Sunday in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So that will be a big occasion. And also yesterday, the Tipp under-23s beat Galway 2-14-2-13 in the RAG yesterday morning. So that secures them, the under-23s, a place in the All-Ireland semi-final. So a good day yesterday for Tipp Camogie.
Okay, very good for Tipp Camogie. What else? We had other Tipp teams in action as well?
Yeah, Friday evening the Miners had a brilliant win against Cork, 217-16 points. So that's 2 wins from 2 for James Woodlock's team. The goals came from Gert Nahoo's Chris Dunn, and Tumivar's KJ Dunn. Conor Morrison of Moy Rovers tipped in with 4 points as well, with some brilliant performances at the back as well there from James Finn and Oisin Kennedy. Tip are away to Limerick next on Thursday week in the Minor Championship. So going well there for Tipperary.
Okay, so overall, how are we feeling about Tipp Gaelic games at the moment then?
Yeah, it's we have to be happy. Our minors are 2 from 2 in hurling. Our under-20s are 2 from 2 in the hurling as well.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And welcome back to Tip Today, folks. I believe we're back on air. Unfortunately, not the first technical issue we've had today, but we do like to get up to our Nina studios, and sometimes connections can go down on us. Now, we were talking here with Paul Carroll, our sports editor, about, I suppose, I think when we got cut off, we were still talking about the Tip Cork match. Quick recap. Look, we're gone into must-win territory, Paul, more or less, you were saying, against Waterford next weekend, if we want to rectify this campaign.
Yeah, so it's still early doors. It's a 4-point defeat against Cork, but down to Waterford next Sunday. It's close to must win. You know, we've 3 games left at home to Cllr and away to Limerick and away to Waterford. So next Sunday is pretty much must win. You feel it's about as must win as a round 2 championship game can be in the Munster Championship. So, Joe, I wouldn't be too down and out over yesterday. Joe, it was a tough defeat, but it could have been worse. We hurled quite poor at times in that second half, but managed to bring it back and stay in the game as it ticked into injury time. So that's a mark of a good team as well. So hopefully in the course of the next 6 days, the lads can iron things out and be ready for Waterford next Sunday.
It probably shows as well that Cork are contenders for the All-Ireland this year, despite being beaten by Limerick. Kind of well beaten, I suppose, in the league final.
Yeah, they would have seen that they underperformed in that league final, and they were certainly back to closer to their best. And Cork Ben O'Connor will have a stick to beat his team as well this week, because they missed 14. They hit 14 wides against Tipp yesterday. Free taking is still a little bit of an issue since Patrick Horgan has retired. So they have a few things to clean up, but they'll be certainly happy with the performances of their forward line in particular, like Shane Barrett, Darragh Fitzgibbon and Barry Walsh, the half forward line, 12 points from play, and William Buckley, a corner forward, with a further 5 points from play. So they're certainly going in the right direction anyway.
Okay, very good. Just briefly again, because we talked about it extensively while we were off air, folks. So we're not ignoring the Camogie or the Tipp Miners, but 2 good wins there.
Yeah, even 3 wins when you count the Tipp under-23 Camogie team as well. So myself and Don were talking to each other here on air, but / off air for the last 5 minutes. But no, a brilliant win yesterday for the Tipp Senior Camogie team, 118-2-9. Performances all over the field, a nice spread of scores there from half back line, Kareem Blair, up to midfield, Kate Ralph, and the half forward line and full forward line as well. Jean Kelly with 2 really eye-catching scores off the bench as well. Tipp under-23s are into an All-Ireland semi-final with 1 group stage game to go. They beat Galway 214-213, and back on Friday evening the Tipp minor hurlers met at 2 wins from 2. They beat Cork 217-16 points, and great goals there from Chris Dunn from the penalty spot, and KJ Dunn of Tumivara as well chipped in with a nice goal too. So they're away to Limerick on Thursday week, looking to make it 3 wins from 3.
Okay, very good, very good. Let's move on to rugby, and locally we had a good result for a local side.
Yeah, Clonmel had a massive win on Saturday. They were in the Division 2C AIL semi-final, and they were at home and against Dolphin of Cork City, and it was 44 points to 17. A brilliant win for Clonmel. They're into the AIL Division 2C final now. They play Bective Rangers next Saturday at 2:30 in Ardguiha. But last Saturday just gone by, they had a brilliant start. Freddie Davies with an early try, some conversions and penalties from Joe O'Connor, who's been top scorer in the AIL this year, and Henry Buttimer, the captain, had an intercept try. This is all in the first 20-25 minutes, so that gave them a 20 points to 0 kickstart, and they pushed on from there. So massive game next Saturday at 2:30 now, looking for some national silverware, some All-Ireland silverware for Clonmel Rugby Club next Saturday.
Yeah, and this isn't about promotion. Someone was explaining that to me, that they're rejigging the leagues next year, so they're already going to be playing in 2B, but a rejigged 2B.
Yeah, it's in the IL you have Division 1A, 1B, 2A, B, C. So there's 5 divisions. So basically they're blending the 4th and 5th division into just 1 4th division next year, where it'll be 2B North and 2B South, just to try and help the teams where Clonmel aren't travelling up to Northern Ireland a couple of times a year, which is very expensive. So it's probably annoying in a sense for Clonmel that this is the year where they would have been promoted anyway because they finished top of the league, but they've just kind of got stuck in the middle of this rejig that they're going to be in 2B, win, lose or draw anyway, but a bit of national silverware would be massive for the club next Saturday.
Yeah, winning a league final would be huge.
Yeah. Particularly with a young team as well.
Yeah, and it's at home again.
Yeah, in Ardguiha at 2:30, so meant to be a great crowd there last Saturday, so I'm sure that will be the same this Saturday coming.
Yeah, very good. Brian Gleeson scoring in what was definitely a must-win game for Munster over in Italy.
I didn't see this game now on Saturday evening, but it was definitely a must-win, as you said, and a lot of kind of negatives coming out of Munster in recent weeks, so you kind of felt like they needed a good result. And
just to boost the spirits a little bit.
Yeah. There's a lot of negativity. So a brilliant win over in Italy against Benetton, 45 points to 15. Brian Gleeson was a substitute, came on in the game and scored a 76-minute try. 7 tries in the game for Munster. So that was a real welcome result as they head into the tail end of the season now.
Yeah, and Benetton are not a poor side anymore. It's a big win on the road.
Yeah, and a lot of kind of top quality Italian internationals, Benecello and these fellas as well. So they're a good team. So that's a very good result over in Italy.
Yeah, Dorothy Wall kind of rested on the bench for the Women's Six Nations game.
Yeah, the feathered native has been a mainstay of the Ireland women's team, close on 40 caps now in the last couple of years, and that's including missing out with an Achilles injury for a long period of time. But Ireland women's got back on track in the Six Nations on Saturday. They beat Italy in front of just under 10,000 people in the Dexcom Stadium, 57 points to 20. Bevan Parsons scored a hat-trick of tries, and Dorothy Wall did feature off the bench after 50 minutes, but they've a big one now away to France next Saturday. France are just kind of they've won both of their matches 38-7 and 47 in the first 2 rounds, so this is a difficult test for Ireland going away to France, but this is all part of the progression of this team, trying to get a bit closer to England, trying to get a bit closer to France as they close the gap on those big 2 powerhouses.
Yeah, good to see an international game being played in the new Dexcom down in Galway. I know the under-20s used to play down in Buccaneers, down in Athlone back in the day when I used to cover such things, but moving it out west, probably a good move as well.
Yeah, always good to move the teams around and just it just spreads the game around and lets more people get out and see them, and probably spreads the support base of the women's team in particular. So kind of like when Páirc Uí Chaoimh was first done up a few years ago, to get as much games as possible into the new stadiums to kind of
show them off.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
pretty much. But again, spread it around, which is always good. Great. Local soccer then, Paul?
Yeah, not a busy weekend of soccer. Just in the TSDL, we just had some Shield games. But in the north of the county, 1 game in the NTNDL Premier Division, and that was yesterday. Shinrone have gone top of the league there. They beat Bellamachy 3-0. They now go 3 points clear with just 1 game to go. So that is a massive result for Shinrone. It's very much in their hands now with 1 game to go. BT Harps are among the teams trying to close that gap. But it is in Shinrone's hands now with 1 game to go. And then just in the world of soccer, I suppose, over the weekend, massive results in the Premier League yesterday, the English Premier League. Manchester City 2-1 winners against Arsenal. Man City now 3 points behind Arsenal, but they do have a game in hand, and the result yesterday just means it's in Man City's hands now against Arsenal in the race for the title. They've 6 games to go. If they win all those, there's nothing Arsenal can do, I think. So it's all on Man City now after that result yesterday. So that was a big result in the Premier League.
Yeah, means it's only going one way, does it? Or will they see it out?
I think there's still a few twists and turns. Like, it's kind of been going against Arsenal the last few weeks with some results. They'll feel like they've kind of let it slip. They were kind of 9 points ahead at one stage. Now they're just 3 points ahead, and Man City have a game in hand. So it's going to be a good finish to the Premier League season. And even down at the other end of the table, like Tottenham are very much in the relegation zone. You have West Ham playing tonight. If they can win, Tottenham will be 3 or 4 points from safety. So there's a few big games to come now in the Premier League over the next. But for the title race, Manchester City, if they do win all their games, they should just beat Arsenal on score difference if Arsenal were to win all their games. But who knows what can happen. Premier League, very, very competitive, and title races often have plenty of twists and turns.
Yeah, okay, very good. And I suppose it's only just to look ahead now. We've already discussed the trip to Waterford for the hurlers next weekend. That, as we said, is crucial. What else have we got to look forward to?
Yeah, so we have the Tipp footballers in a Munster semi-final on Saturday at 2 o'clock against Cork in Thurles in FBD Semple Stadium. So that's a big game. Cork would be big favourites for that. But as we saw in the Leinster Championship, some of the games over the weekend, Westmeath beating Meath, Wicklow ran double Dublin very close. You just don't know what can happen in these games. So that is Saturday at 2 o'clock. On Wednesday in Thurles, Tipperary under-20 hurlers are back in action. They play Cllr, looking to go 3 wins from 3. And as we mentioned, the Tipperary Camogies are in the Munster Senior Camogie semi-final on Sunday. That is against Limerick in Páirc Uí Chaoimh before the Limerick and Cork match. So, and as we mentioned, Clonmel Rugby with the big game on Saturday at 2:30 against Bective Rangers. So another very busy week of sport to come in Tipperary, Donald.
Yeah, and we'll probably see Dorothy Wall come back in. Is that next weekend?
Saturday, away to France on Saturday, so probably try and get her back in. And I'm not sure if Munster are playing next weekend or what way those games are spread out.
I can't remember how their fixtures are, but there'll be nothing easy anyway. They need to keep themselves in the Heineken Cup contention, because I think absolutely bottom line.
Yeah, to finish in the top 8 in the URC, I think it's worth at least a million extra for Munster, and with financial constraints and things like that, that is
redundancies. They can't let that go, because they factor that in. That's banked in. They figure, in the accountants, like they have to.
Yeah, so it's a big kind of end of the season coming for Munster, no doubt.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, though, Paul, the weather is meant to be fine for next weekend. How are we going to watch all this sport?
I know, it's unbelievable to have it. I think the Munster Championship just brought the weather with it. So yesterday the weather turned, and I think it's to be dry for the next week or so. So next Sunday down in Waterford should be a nice occasion at the very least, anyway.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, now I don't have an ad break. We used it, I think, while we were gone back down to Clonmel there during our little mishap. I'm told it was a power surge of some kind down at our studios in Clonmel, but we will move swiftly along anyway. And just in our last piece for today, this fine Monday, as we were saying, spring is definitely here. It even felt like summer, but we have one more guest on, following on from Leanne last week, asking our listeners what movies they think most reflect Irish society in 2026. A few came to mind for Carl Clancy. Sorry, I'm sniggering here to myself, because myself and my family at the moment are watching the Hunger Games movies, and I'm not going to say any more about that. But Carl should be joining us now on the phone. Carl, how are you? Good morning. It is still good morning.
Hey, good morning, Donald. How are you?
I'm very good.
A bit of crack out of this very quickly, will we?
Yeah. Look, as Paul said, we're talking sport and movies to finish the show. How bad, as they'd say down my way. Carl, you had a few movies come to mind in reference to reflecting Irish society in 2026. Where do you want to start?
Well, I have to start with Dumb and Dumber, don't I? I think that our political parties, our incumbents, might be best described as, if you're being uncharitable, the leading part being Jim Carrey.
Yes.
I see it and I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
I suppose after that, I thought Gladiator. The story of a man who works really hard and is hailed as a hero right up until a moment where he's of no further value, and then they try to get rid of him and say he's the greatest villain who ever lived.
Okay, I was wondering. I saw Gladiator was on your list, but I won't ask for you to clarify any further who you were thinking of there. But there's a certain narrative that we're going on.
Oh, a little bit. Just where we are at the moment. I suppose I put E.T. on the list because half the time I wish somebody would try to get me off the planet. So it's a case of, oh God, not another thing that's gone wrong. Please, if there are aliens out there, come along, please. I'll give you my air code. You can find me fairly easily.
Or at least take me on a bike ride over the moon or something.
Yeah. Please, I want to phone home. I think that after that, one I thought of at the weekend was, for the state of the world today, Idiocracy. A movie about a guy who falls asleep for 500 years, and when he wakes up, the world has become the dumbest place you could possibly imagine. So I just thought,
I don't think I ever saw the movie, but I remember the trailer, and he's basically wouldn't have been considered smart in this day and age, but he was the highest IQ when he woke up or something.
Yeah, the whole point being that if you continue to reward mediocrity that eventually mediocrity becomes the highest bar and everybody else aspires to mediocrity. So a very funny thought about that particular movie, when they were making it, they wanted a footwear that everybody could wear that was so ridiculous that it was just idiotic. And they found this small company in California that was making extruded foam plastic clogs.
Okay.
And they said, yeah, they will never take off. Yeah, Crocs took off a little bit. So
They did, yeah.
maybe we're not that far away from mediocrity at the end of the day.
No, we might not be. I saw Animal Farm is on your list. I did definitely think of that myself not so long ago with the 4 legs good, 2 legs bad situation.
Yeah, but then there was that and Fahrenheit 9/11, which is a movie about a country that bans all its books and you're not allowed to read. Now, if that doesn't describe the current state of affairs in several states at the other side of the pond, I really don't know what does. So, yeah, some of it's a little pessimistic, I suppose, but
certainly is. Fahrenheit 911 is obviously, well, not obviously, it's actually the temperature at which paper burns.
Yes, and I wonder if it's maybe a nod in the direction of 9/11.
Well, I think it predates 9/11.
Yeah, just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit. But maybe they took some inspiration for their dates. But yes, those are the kind of movies that I think are summing us up at the moment. But then you have
you mentioned Brave New World as well,
Buckley.
Carl. What was the tie you were? How were you tying that in?
A Brave New World is actually not so much a movie as a book. And
they did make a TV series not so long ago out of the Huxley book.
I could shoehorn that in there if I had to. It's not so much the Animal Farm kind of George Orwell view of things where it's 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. It's if you don't know you're in a prison, then you're not in a prison. So that's kind of the way that looked at things, that it can be as bad as it needs to be, but if you don't know it's bad, then it's not really bad. But you have Jessie Buckley and Hamnet, and that's the other end of things. There's a lot of love out there. There's a lot of good vibes. There's a lot of positivity. It's not all doom and gloom. And if we all pull together, we'll probably be okay.
Carl, I don't know how you managed to end that on a positive note, but we will take it. Thank you very much for joining us, Carl. It is time to wrap up for another day. I'll be back sitting in for Fran again tomorrow. But thanks to Carl Clancy there, our last guests, and all our guests this morning, and all our listeners, and to Leanne for producing. Like I say, I'll be back for Fran again tomorrow. But for now, it's time to wrap up the show and go to news.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.